said. But one of the things he does, he points us back to Scripture, and sometimes there are difficult things. You go back into Abraham, and when God kind of first calls out the people, we'll look at those scriptures specifically. And he actually calls Abraham, and he says, I'm going to call you out from all the other people, and I'm going to be your God, and you're going to be my people. And it's in the King James Version only, the word peculiar. You will be a peculiar people. Now, some people are taking that a little too seriously. And it's only in the King James Version, so maybe there's some connection. I'm just saying, okay? But for us to be a called out and peculiar people, Michael Jr., he kind of, lays that out for us, how that happened. One day, Abraham, he's got a lot of servants, and they're working out in the fields and taking care of the sheep, all the kind of stuff that they do. And God says, you know what, this is going to be a sign between us that you're my people and I'm your God, and it was circumcision. And I'm thinking, if I was Abraham's servant, he said, what are we going to do, boss? Shear the sheep, plant. Well, today we're going to do something a little bit different. God told us, we should circumcise, and Michael Jr. does it so well, but he's asking, he's talking about, okay, what exactly did he say? God's words, please. Circumcise foreskins. Are you sure he didn't say your skin? Something that made me think about, I'd be asking too, is like, all right, now what exactly did he say? Circumcise? You sure he didn't say exercise? I don't need doing a few push-ups. I don't mind that. That's what he needs. But ultimately in that story, what happens is, and they obeyed. They obeyed. And that was something weird that made them peculiar. And he called them out of other peoples and said, this is going to be, I'm going to mark you physically. And you're going to be a peculiar people. You're going to stand out from others. They're going to look at you and go, who's your God? I shared this in a class recently. I think of the story of Naaman. He's a pretty high-powered military guy. But he had leprosy. At that time, leprosy was kind of the cancer of today. And there was every country, even every house, kind of had their own god. They would have household gods they would worship, little statues or something. But also every kingdom, and he was a soldier in someone's kingdom, and they would have kings that they would worship, and to bless them before they went into battle and those types of things. Often carried them into battle with them. Often when two countries battled, they saw it actually as a conflict between their gods. And whoever would win physically was really just a reflection of whose God was stronger. He has leprosy, and he has a Jewish servant girl, and he, is like, okay, I've gone, and my gods can't do anything about this. And the servant girl, at some point, we don't have the whole conversation, but basically, at some point she says, my people have a God. Well, where's that kingdom? Where's the king? I'll go talk to that king. Well, he's kind of the king. But he does have some people here. He's got this guy named Elijah. He's a prophet. And go see him. So he goes, and this is a high-ranking military guy. Guaranteed he went with 5 limousines, motorcade, sirens going, okay? So not a small deal. Pulls up in front of the house. God's representative doesn't even go out to greet him. I think if you go back in, he's actually like cutting carrots up for dinner or something. He doesn't even bother to go out. So sends a servant in, he wants to be healed, sure, God, I'll do that for him. Tell him to go dip in the Jordan River. We won't get into all that kind of stuff. He eventually goes and does that. And he comes back to Elijah and he says, kind of got a problem. I know now, this is a quote from Naaman, I know now that your God is God alone. Isn't that what people around us are looking for? They're worshiping their household gods of fill in the blank, right? Of sex, materialism, money, their own personal happiness, selfish, fill in the blank. They may not have it carved out of wood sitting on the mantle, but it's there. And at some point, we want them to come back and say, I receive by the power of God in you, your God, that your God is God alone. And that was very peculiar to say that there is only one God. Remember, that's what God tells Moses when he starts out, I am the Lord your God. And I am God alone, single. And Naaman asks Elijah, I got this problem. I'm going to have to go back. Now, I I know that your God's the real God, and that there's no other God but your God, because of the power I see that he has done. But I'm going to go back, and the next time my commander calls us all for worship, he's going to tell us to kneel to this God that I know now is nothing. I'm not sure what to do. And it's kind of a beautiful thing, because you would kind of think Elijah would just call him on the call. Well, do you believe you appreciate what God did for you or not? Elijah actually passes out a little bit of grace that's there way before the New Testament shows up. And he says, you know what? I know. And he says, go in peace. I don't figure it out. It's real nice and clean when you're in the prophet's house and we're studying the Bible and, that kind of, when you get out there, yeah, it gets messy. You just do your best to follow God. You decide. Don't get sucked back into the culture again. You got to be weird. But I understand it's going to take some time to work that out. And I want to allow for that same amount of time here as well. I can't help but point us to a couple verses and we'll end. After these verses, we're going to sing a song. If we can help you, if you won't be able to do these things, you will not be able to stomach the truth unless you already have decided that Jesus is going to be your Lord, that normal is not working. If you want to talk about that, you can come up front as we sing this song. Catch me, stay for the luncheon. Catch me later. Say, I want to talk about how do I do that, David? If you came with someone today, ask them about that as well. Let me begin to point you toward hope and encouragement, though. Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. First out of the New International Version. This is kind of how most of us know it. It says, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, it's all in view of God's mercy, okay? Without that, it doesn't make sense. In view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform, okay, be weird is what he's saying. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. I like it out of the Message. I'm not a huge fan of the Message. It's pretty loose. You figure that out? It's like at the Last Supper, they're having like Twinkies and chocolate milk and stuff like that, But I do like how it captured this idea, because what I want this to land, I don't want this to be religious. For us who are already believers in our church family, but especially for those, I hope we'll be bold in inviting people this month. And I like how this plants it right out there where everyone is living. Listen to how Eugene Peterson translates the same verse. So here's what I want you to do. God helping you, take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around, and that life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture. Be weird, he's saying. Don't be so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what he wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings the best out of you, develops well-formed maturity in you. Amen. Don't you like that promise? We're going to end on some encouragement and hope. One final thing from the words of Jesus himself, from the mouth of Jesus himself, out of Matthew chapter 7. Hope you'll jot these down. We're going to go back and revisit these. We're going to look at them a little more closely. But this is basically Jesus' invitation to be weird. Enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction. That's where normal's taking us, isn't it? And many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. You want to have what only a few people have. Do what only a few people do. Maybe that's your From Church Facebook post, to let them know you're here. If you want what few people have, do what few people do. Know that if your normal life isn't working, there is hope. Know that God has something bigger, different, and planned for you in your life than what you've been experiencing. Somewhere I read that it was probably more than you can even ask for or imagine. A life where you are blessed, where others are blessed through you, and where God, most importantly, God is glorified. I know I haven't given many answers today, and I sure haven't given specifics about what weird looks like, so you may not be ready to sign on for weird this morning. But what I want you to do is go home and you mark up that contract that you have signed with normal. Because normal isn't working. Jesus is the way. And He invites you to do what only a few people are willing to do. To be on the path that only a few people seem to find. It leads to a different destination. Let's stand and sing.